This is a bad idea.
Last chance, Marshal. We're going in.
It's funny when you think that the Far Cry series has been going strong now for almost 2 decades, and I can still remember playing the original demo for the first game way back in the day and just being blown away by its large open map design. Flash forward to 2018 and Ubisoft is still at it, and that game world's only getting bigger and more detailed, with the recently released Far Cry 5, which I have to say is probably my favourite game in the whole series, since Far Cry 2. Why is that? Well, I'm so glad you asked. Let's just find out, shall we? So I don't think anyone doesn't know what the story's about. It's been pretty well publicised so far, but the basic gist is that you're a deputy marshal trying to arrest a cult leader by the name of Joseph Seed, who looks like Clem Fandango from Toaster London in the fictional Hope County. And he's basically converted most of the community into his congregation, giving power to his 3 siblings, Faith, Jacob, and John. And you've got to dismantle their operations individually before taking down Joseph himself. You can see how they've tried to make them 3-dimensional villains, and truth be told, they all do have some kind of messed up background, and they seem to try to justify their actions by some of the horrible stuff that's happened to each of them in the past, but really they're just pretty clear-cut bad guys. And they do some pretty dark and twisted things to characters in the game along the way.
This one's not clean.
So if you played a Far Cry game before, then you know exactly what you're in for. You can expect a big map with lots of little markers all over it. You can expect bizarre dream/drug sequences, and there's also plenty of opportunities to just blow shit up. You can also buy and customize your own cars, boats, and choppers, not to mention planes. And you can purchase all manner of weapons and personalize your loadout to suit your own personal playstyle. And that's really only scratching the surface. You can even choose your own gender, modify your appearance, and choose from a bunch of different outfits. Not that it really matters, as you never see your character much outside of this screen and a few wanted posters. Giving players this open-ended gameplay is something this series is well known for, not to really mention Ubisoft games in general, and it's something it just does very well. But if you are expecting it to break new ground, well, you're going to be disappointed, but that's like watching The Simpsons and expecting it to suddenly be live action, or watching Amy Schumer's stand-up routine and expecting it to be funny. Now, I think I said this about 5 times this year already, but this has to be the best looking game I think I've played in a long time. The environments in this game are just downright photorealistic, with superb lighting and some really impressive looking water effects and believable foliage. It also seems to run pretty damn well too, and I mean, I didn't have any real performance issues pretty much the entire time. And this is running it on a pre-release version before it even had any kind of day one drivers from Nvidia. Not to mention, it's got enough options in the graphics menu to shut up even the likes of Total Biscuit. During the cinematics, you'll notice how believable some of the facial animations are, which you'll get plenty of chances to do, as most of the dialogue is delivered by someone standing inches away from the player's face. Far Cry 5's mission system is a bit different from the prior games too, so what you're doing is tackling main missions and side missions to rally up resistance against the cult, and once you've reached a certain point, you can then progress to the next main story-related mission. You're going after the entire Seed family, starting with the 3 siblings, and from the get-go you can choose where to start, which is a pretty nice touch. What this involves is going around being a fly in the ointment and just pissing everyone off, until you piss them off enough that they'll literally kidnap you in the middle of whatever else you're doing and progress the campaign along. And it always follows this similar path where you're captured, you listen to one of the characters give out this 5-minute monologue about how messed up their past was, then you have to break out of your confines, shoot a bunch of people before you can then just go back to doing what you were doing. Once you've done this like 3 or 4 times, you can then liberate that region completely by finishing off one of the siblings and then move on to the next. Spoilers, I know. And it's a kind of a weird inclusion for a game that's never really forced anything on the player. Another somewhat new inclusion to the game is the gun for hire system, and basically in a nutshell, it's the ability to have 1 or 2 other AI controlled characters playing alongside you, helping you out in combat and even reviving you if you take too much damage. And I think it's a combination of the buddy system in Far Cry 2 and the pet system in Far Cry Primal, where it's a mix of both human and animal companions, all of whom have their own unique skill sets and abilities. And I gotta say that some of them are pretty creative, and they've even got their own unique banter depending on who you've chosen. However, not all companions are created equal. I mean, Boomer the dog, for instance, should be fun. I mean, who doesn't like having a dog as a sidekick? But he's only really good at taking down enemies if they're unaware, and otherwise he's prone to getting knocked out pretty quickly. The sniper character Grace also seems like she should be good, but she's really not. I really hoped she was going to be like Quiet from Metal Gear Solid 5, but she frequently has trouble lining shots up with enemies. And instead of trying to change her position to get a better angle, she'll just stand there like an idiot and do nothing. Nick Wright can fly around in his plane and attack enemies from the skies, but he takes so goddamn long to do something as simple as dropping a bomb on someone that you're better off just doing it yourself from the ground with an RPG or a grenade. On the more positive side though, you've got someone like Jess Black, the edgy, stealthy companion who is actually kinda useful, able to sneak around with you and take enemies out with her bow. And then you've got the grizzly bear named Cheeseburger. And can we all just take a moment to appreciate how amazing it is to have a bear assisting you in combat? I mean, honestly, some of the stuff that happens with this guy is just hilarious to witness. It just kind of depends on what playstyle you're going for, and if you're going to be sneaky and avoid too much combat, well, taking someone that's going to hover above you with a helicopter and obliterate the cultists with a machine gun probably isn't a good idea. It does at the very least make the game feel a bit less lonely, so you're not just always wandering around this giant map by yourself. The upgrade systems also had a bit of an overhaul, so the way this worked in the previous games is that when you make kills, you earn XP. The more skillful the kill was, whether it be a headshot or a stealth takedown, would increase the XP earned. Now this time around you don't get anything for each kill, but instead what happens is you earn perk points from completing mini challenges, like killing a certain amount of people with an assault rifle or a grenade launcher. It could even be something as simple as catching a certain kind of fish.
We're doing this all day.
Then you go and spend the perk points on the perks themselves. The perks are pretty par for the course in that it's the old chestnuts like holding more ammo types, getting more health points, all that kind of stuff. But the new system of how you acquire these does make the game feel less grindy. You don't need 100 kills with a certain weapon to complete that challenge, it's often like 10 or so. And to collect the points for a hunting challenge, you only need to skin like 2 or 3 of that particular animal. Gone are the days of hunting down that one elusive deer or tiger that you need to craft that next ammo pouch. In fact, even when skinning and looting now, the effect is instant, without that tedious 2 or so second animation of your character patting down a corpse. I think it's also good too because it doesn't punish you anymore for taking a more combat-based approach. Considering in the previous games, I think you'd honestly get like double if not triple XP for remaining undetected, especially when clearing outposts. Now you can just go in guns blazing and not really worry about it. I mean, you do get less cash for being detected, but seeing as money is so easy to make, it doesn't really make it an issue. On the subject of hunting, there's also the fly fishing minigame, which look, it sounds like a weird inclusion, but there's something just so calming about this. And it really makes for a nice contrast between blowing up trucks with RPGs and shooting droves of cultists over and over. It's also handy that you earn cash from selling all of the fish, and there's even a few different rods and lure types for each specific kind of fish. It's surprisingly enjoyable for something that on paper just kind of sounds like a throwaway feature.
That's a biggie, but he's no admiral. Total legend, that fishing.
Despite taking a few steps forward though, Far Cry 5 is a game that feels rooted in its own traditions, and it still hasn't really changed all that much in terms of the core gameplay. Like pretty much all of the other games in the series, it's at its best when you're free to do whatever you want to do. You know, explore the regions and just do whatever tickles your fancy. I often find that the main structured missions of the game are often really crappy and follow that tired and irritating design concept of just throwing dozens of enemies at the player to make the game come across as challenging. Ubisoft still can't design these boss fights to save their lives, and don't even get me started on the endings. Then there was also a bit of negativity around the microtransactions. Basically the way this works is you spend real cash to buy silver bars and then you spend those bars on stuff in game. But it's stuff that you can easily earn if you're not lazy and just play the game properly. So I don't think it's worth complaining about considering it's not really pay to win. And if you're dumb enough to buy this, well, you've only got yourself to blame. I had hoped to talk about the arcade mode, but it's still not working on my end, which is probably due to the fact that I don't think the game's even fully released in certain countries. And there's also the co-op mode, which again I haven't even had a chance to try out for similar reasons. So maybe that's something for a future video. But they're not exactly make or break factors, and the base game I think is solid enough that it still warrants a purchase, even if you can't access these features.
The fire's really burning now. What a sight.
At the end of the day, Far Cry 5 might not have a game world as believable as Far Cry 2's, and it might not have an antagonist as well written as Vaas in Far Cry 3. But what Far Cry 5 does, it does well. It's just another one of those great time sink games where you can just lose track of what you're supposed to be doing, and then realize you've just spent the last 3 hours trying to catch trout, hunt elk with a bow, or kill cultists with shovels and metal pipes. I'd have no problems recommending Far Cry 5. Even after I'd finished the main campaign at about 25 hours in, I still had a game world with plenty of stuff to do. I had legendary fish to catch, I had the remnants of the Eden's Gate cult to exterminate, and I still had corners of the map to fill in. With friends or solo, Far Cry 5 is a great time. And look, more importantly, there really are so few games that let you play alongside a murderous rampaging grizzly bear that you almost need to check it out for that reason alone.